Welcome to Come Home to Forest Lawn. This is a cemetery podcast, really taking listeners and viewers behind the iconic gates of one of our country's most iconic cemeteries, Forest Lawn in Buffalo, New York. And this podcast will talk about issues around preservation of legacy, memorialization, making plans, and also visiting a very, very historic place and space for Western New York. I'm Julie Snyder, the CEO of Forest Lawn Cemetery Group. And today's podcast, I'm very pleased to have alongside me the Honorable Barbara Howe, who is probably most known as the New York State Surrogate Judge for Erie County from 2004 to 2017. Judge Howe has her undergraduate degree in history and sociology from the University of Connecticut. She went on to get a PhD in sociology from Cornell. There was a master's in there as well. And finally, she is a graduate of UB School of Law. So I don't know whether to call you Honorable Judge, Dr. Howe, or just one of our incredible customers at Forest Lawn. But welcome to Come Home to Forest Lawn, Judge Howe. And I guess to begin, I'm going to ask you to put on your black robe. You are at the bench of Erie County Surrogate Court. What exactly does that court have oversight of?
The Erie County Surrogate Court and the Surrogate Court of every county in New York State, of which there are 62, have jurisdiction over estates and the affairs of decedents. So it's a broad range of jurisdiction over anything that touches the lives of people who have passed away. There's also other things the court does in terms of guardianships and whatnot. Mm-hmm. But for our conversation, this is about the path to planning for one's passing.
And that is something that you had professional oversight of for 15 years.
I believe it was 14 years, and I know that I handled over 150,000 estates because I was the only judge that handled matters relating to decedents in Erie County. Erie County, of the 62 counties in New York, has the most number of estate filings of any surrogate's court in the state. An aging population.
Yes.
And important and sensitive work.
So from that lens, and based on who our audience might be, how important is it for an individual or a couple, a family, to have made a will and filed a will?
It is so important. That is one of many things that's important. And over the years I was in this judgeship, and in the 8 years since I've left, I implore people to please start thinking about this topic. And I try to bring light and energy to something that understandably is somber and depressing for many people to contemplate. But having looked at this from the side of what goes wrong, if people do not plan every aspect of their demise, it is so important to try to get motivated to make a will, a healthcare proxy, a power of attorney, and every bit as important, especially for our conversation today, to make plans about what a person wants to do with their remains in terms of how they want them disposed of, handled, and where they would like their remains to be.
And to be clear, this document we're speaking about is legally called disposition of remains, which sort of sounds very direct, if you will. But it's different than your will. Is that not correct? That document, disposition of remains, is not the same as your last will and testament.
That is so important, Julie, because sometimes people think the will is the place where they should put directions about what should happen to their body when they pass. Well, that is totally not the right place, because frequently, even if a person has a will, it isn't probated till long after they need to have dealt with the immediacy of what happens when a person passes. No, as I was gathering my thoughts for today, I was so surprised to see that even more than a year ago, there are so many resources online that a person can start the journey of estate planning in the privacy of their own home by Googling. So that I'm analogizing this if someone wants to buy a home. In the same manner, if someone wants to put a toe in the water about how to deal with planning their demise, it is now so easy to go online and access in plain English resources. And then after, just like with a travel agent or a real estate agent, after the person has done their own survey online and through physical books and other readings, then they can go as an informed person and hopefully a more relaxed and comfortable person to see a funeral director and to see an administrator at a cemetery.
That's great advice. And it's funny the analogy you use, because I know so many people that spend a great deal of time researching a car purchase or a vacation. But when you ask them, have you thought or have you communicated to your family what you would like to have happen after you die? You know, the idea of, oh, just cremate me and sprinkle me in Lake Erie. I say that's not a plan. And you've certainly seen that over and over again in the court. And I certainly have seen that since becoming CEO at Forest Lawn. So thinking about that, what advice would you give to someone who has not made funeral or burial arrangements and has just sort of said, I'm going to leave it up to the kids. There's enough money for them to do however they figure it out, which is also something I've heard.
Well,
what advice?
To be thoughtful and caring of your loved ones, it is so important to handle all these matters ahead of time.
Yes.
Because it's going to cause uncertainty and pain and delay for the people you love the most if you leave this in their hands till after something happens. I will say that in my case, in addition to watching all the proceedings and presiding over all the matters which occurred when people didn't make a plan, I've had to deal with it in my own life. And I'm a widow with no children. And I have a sister and brother-in-law who live on the other side of the country. They are loving, intelligent, wonderful people. But they have sitting on their mantelpiece in their home in Nevada, where they moved from California about 10 years ago. They have sitting on the mantelpiece on one side my mother's ashes in an urn from her passing more than 20 years ago.
Oh, my goodness.
And my father's ashes in an urn from passing more than 10 years ago. And they took the care to move the ashes from California to Nevada. And they just haven't decided what to do yet about that. So I knew that I had to bring this topic up with them and say that I was going to make a plan so that I didn't take up a space.
So you didn't join your parents on the mantle.
Mantelpiece.
And I mean, first of all, it's lovely that they are still with your sister and that they are in a safe place on a mantle. But the idea of waiting decades for final placement, final memorialization, you know, we use the word final rest. And that word really does carry with it a belief that now you have sort of completed your journey. I say a birth certificate and a burial location are the bookends on a life well lived. And so that 40, 50, 70 years from now, Forest Lawn's been around 175 years. Those headstones and those burial records are not so much for this generation, although family members come all the time. It's really the idea of honoring that life, bookending that life, and completing that journey on earth.
And I have to tell you that my sister and brother-in-law were relieved when I did this.
Yes.
I mean, that just
Maybe
was,
we need to bring mom and dad to Buffalo.
right.
Quite frankly.
Again,
we
they're
want, now I'm worried about them.
intelligent, loving people.
Yeah.
But it's just an area where
People have blind spots
or discomfort for whatever
Yes.
reason. And
Yes.
so I think I would have come to this no matter what my occupation, based on what I saw on the mantelpiece.
in your own family. Yes.
Right. But the incentive, of course, is exponential based on the fact that I have actually presided over, and my staff attorneys when I was a surrogate judge have presided over hearings and trials about whether mom wanted to be scattered ashes or buried ashes. I'm sure
yeah.
you have dealt with this.
Yes. And also, as we talked about, final disposition and what that means, it's important for people to understand that cemeteries are governed by law in the state of New York, the New York State Division of Cemeteries, which includes the Department of Health, the Attorney General, and the Secretary of State on the cemetery board. But there's also law regarding the disposition of remains, and that's law that you've frequently had to consult.
It is so important. Again, I can refer listeners to online, easy to find materials on New York State's Public Health Law, Section 4201, which is called Final Disposition Law. What it is the section of the law that tells who gets to direct what happens with a person's remains. And the number one option is that a person is designated in a written instrument called disposition of remains.
Great.
And if a person will make that instrument, do that instrument with their funeral director, if they do that instrument as one of their most important things to do, then we don't have to go down the list in the law to the other options, because the other options then are spouse, domestic partner, any child 18 or older, etc. So there's a list that one has to follow. Every funeral director is bound to have to follow if a person doesn't make their own disposition decisions made in writing and signed.
And witnessed.
Yes.
And witnessed.
Yes.
That's very good to know. One of the reasons why we wanted to make sure that people heard your story is so they understood that someone that was so informed went through a process like this, and that you made a decision to, pardon the pun, come home to Forest Lawn. And why did you select Forest Lawn, if you don't mind sharing?
Oh, I don't mind sharing that at all. I came to Buffalo, New York from Cornell University 50 years ago. And one of the first places I enjoyed going to do my exercise, to do my walking and fitness, was Forest Lawn, because it's so park-like. It's so tranquil. The wildlife, the birds, the geese, the ponds, the deer. I felt like I was walking in gardens in England.
Mm-hmm.
And I have no criticism of any other space, okay? Because
there are many cemeteries.
I have been probably to hundreds of funeral services, masses, and burials,
Yes.
all right? Hundreds of them. My own grandparents at veteran ceremonies.
Oh, yes.
Veteran
Very honorable.
Which you have at Forest Lawn.
We do. We have our Field of Valor.
And But there was something about this place. I want to say it not only is not depressing, I found it peaceful and magical.
Mm-hmm.
So there was no doubt when I got my act together about where I was going to place my cremated remains.
And what was your process? So you just called Forest Lawn and came in and met with one of our family service representatives. Did you feel pressure? Did you feel overwhelmed? I mean, I sort of think people, they certainly know what it's like to go and buy clothing or go and buy a home, go and buy a car. What's it like as a customer to come and buy a place or space for final rest?
Well, once I had decided how I wanted my remains disposed of, which is cremation,
Mm-hmm.
and where I wanted those remains to be, Forest Lawn, the rest was relatively easy.
Mm-hmm.
The people at Forest Lawn were fabulous because they raised the questions that I hadn't raised that I needed to answer. For example, did I want to engrave my niche
Mm-hmm.
now, or did I want to wait until after I had passed? Well, that was a question for thought. Your representative said that I might want to wait for a couple of reasons. Some people really are uncomfortable with seeing their name on a stone while they're still alive.
Yes.
So I looked up before we were having this conversation today, and it was about 2 months after I was asked to think about this,
Mm-hmm.
whether I wanted to do the engraving now or after I passed. About 2 months later, I said, I'm ready. So I came back, and for what I am saying is a nominal amount of money, I was able to then have the engraving ordered and paid for.
I recall that we spoke about making sure we had the Honorable
Well,
Barbara
what you
Howe.
have, which
We
I
wanted
appreciate,
to have that.
you have protocols.
Yes, we
Some
do.
of your protocols are in New York State law, which governs
cemetery law.
which is very strict.
Yes, it is.
And then others are your policies, which are well laid out in your website.
They can all be reviewed.
Right. And actually, there was a protocol with the verbiage that had to be used if I
Yes.
was going to have a title.
Yes.
And that's existed for other people who've been in elective office.
Other judges
and
members of Congress.
Right, and there's a protocol. I thought, well, this takes care of that too, which would be, if I didn't do it, another nightmare topic for other
Decision.
people to deal
Yes.
with, having no clue.
Yes. Well, you certainly have been so generous, Judge Howe, to share your journey and your expertise. And I think your wisdom of sitting on the bench all those years and having to sit through so many cases where individuals had not taken the time to make a plan. We really encourage everyone listening to think about their own final chapter. Have those conversations with children, with partners, with individuals that they have really entrusted to take care of their final wishes. And if you've not made those arrangements, we do encourage you to contact a local funeral director, certainly contact us at Forest Lawn, talk to your family attorney. And as Judge Howe said, you can certainly start online. But for all those reasons, we encourage you to come home to Forest Lawn. I want to thank the Honorable Barbara Howe, one of our 175,000 plus lot holders at Forest Lawn. And thank you so much for your time today.
It's been a privilege.
Thank you.